I was right. We were counting down there off camera. You don't need to know any of that stuff. Hello, welcome, and good morning. Now, ordinarily, the last-minute equaliser from Bournemouth against Chelsea and Alvaro Morata going down the other end of the field and scoring last-gasp winner would be the most dramatic thing that happened in the League Cup last night. We might not know the name of the Carambeau Cup, but we've always been long admirers of the knockout football under lights midweek, when teams actually care about the result and they go for it. With the crazy two-legged semi-finals randomly appearing out of nowhere in the middle of the competition. Yeah. It's at no other point, it's early on and then not again and then not in the important bits and then just for the semi-finals and not for the final. And then away goals counting extra, but only in extra time, if it goes to extra time, in the second leg of the... it doesn't make any sense.
It's magical, and you've got the added idea here that the Premier League is done. So you've got Arsenal and Chelsea who really want to win this thing as well.
This is true. I'd kind of forgotten about it. But it generally, the reason I like it is because Man United would have the league wrapped up many seasons in their pomp when they had the best team by a mile and Alex Ferguson was the manager and terrorised all the other teams by just being Alex Ferguson. And so this competition actually had some kind of, there's good football on with two teams who are relatively equal and going for it. But that wasn't the big story of last night. The big story of last night is that... Jose Mourinho got a 450 quid bottle of wine from Lee Johnson, the 36-year-old manager. Here it is. Barça Valladolid, 2004 though. That is the Barcelona crest on it. I don't know why there's a Portuguese winemaker making Barcelona crested wine. And I don't know why Jose Mourinho likes it so much. And I have no idea why it cost 450 quid. But the toadying of Lee Johnson in the build-up to the match was like, had to raid my daughter's piggy bank to make sure that I could afford the wine. That maybe we'll convince Jose Mourinho to come in for a glass afterwards. Screw that, buddy. You're now way more famous than you were. And you didn't even need the wine.
Yeah.
Should have backed himself. He didn't need the wine.
Do we know if Jose went in for a glass?
I'm sure he did.
Did Jose tell him to keep it down a little bit as he was popping the wine? Did Jose Mourinho tell all the fans running onto the pitch after the game to keep it down a little bit and show some respect?
You've won nothing yet.
I thought it was so disrespectful from Bristol City fans yesterday to stream onto the pitch after beating the most historical club in English football. I'm amazed at the response from everybody. This is back to the dark ages of pitch invasions. Pitch invasions in the dark ages were by skinheads and thugs who were trying to beat the crap out of the opposition team and trying to get to the opposition fans. Those pitch invasions are old school GAA 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s and early noughties before the public liability insurance kicked in. And it was pure unbridled joy, and there's nothing wrong with it. And you just wonder about the tutting. Henry Winter tweeted, pitch invasion, didn't judge the way you might have expected him to, but immediately was like, this is disgraceful. This is terrible. His followers were clearly the ex-Telegraph readers. It was amazing. Yeah, I thought it was just a magical moment. Although the highlights I was watching this morning cut off just as the pitch invasion was about to get good.
Not to give them any glory, like a streaker.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't give those people any joy.
I know.
Sells on TV for a moment.
Highly disappointed, but I'm wondering, is this the highest level pitch invasion we've seen in English football? I'm trying to think. I
think there's generally championship
15, 20 years.
Playoff winners have done it in the last couple of seasons.
So do you really get it in the you don't really get it in the championship playoffs anymore because it's in Wembley.
That's a good point.
Maybe once they actually clinch promotion
to the final.
I can see Sean Dyche getting carried aloft 2 seasons ago when Burnley got promoted.
You love a bit of Sean Dyche, don't you?
Yeah, of course I love Sean Dyche.
Fantasize about Sean Dyche being carried off the turf at Goodison at some point.
Yes, of course I do. Who doesn't? It's it's everybody's fantasy. But yeah, no, I can see the Sean Dyche, and that was probably the last good pitch invasion that's happened in a top level game. Let's say.
What is your obsession with Sean Dyche?
Sean Dyche is just a great manager. I like
saying his name, and you like his hair colour.
It's very juvenile argument from you here that it's
you love his voice.
This is basically you saying, you disagreed with me about Sean Dyche versus Sam Allardyce. If you love Sean Dyche so much, why didn't you marry him? That's exactly the argument you're putting forward here. It's just so juvenile.
Why don't you marry Sean Dyche? Right, what's coming up on the show today? Keith Wood was not on Wednesday Night Rugby last night, so we've got him live on the show this morning by Skype from his man cave in Killaloe. That's coming up a little bit later on. We'll talk about the Jared Payne issue. Payne's still not fit to play yet, having got a concussion on maybe got just a head injury on the Lions tour, so that's a long time for him to be out of the game. We'll talk about the Cian Healy suspension. Healy out for 3 games. Manu Tuilagi did not get banned, maybe because Brian O'Driscoll tweeted he shouldn't get banned. That's the power of a Drico tweet these days. And we'll also talk about the forthcoming Interpros. So if you have any questions for Keith, now would be a good time to roll them in advance of him coming on just after 8 o'clock this morning at Off the Ball on Twitter. We're also going to speak about with Robbie Dunne, who is the author of this book, Working Class Heroes. It's the story of Rayo Vallecano, Madrid's other club, in advance of the Clasico, which kicks off at 12 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Now, not the best time in advance of Christmas to be able to watch a match, and yet also not the worst time. It's like, just make sure that the kids have lunch early and you can sneak into the TV and go, oh, it's work, I have to watch this.
Yeah.
That's my plan.
Why is it on so early, I wonder? Like, I was just kind of musing that it might be the fact that the Spanish kind of celebrate Christmas Eve a lot more than we do, and getting home early from Madrid to Barcelona.
Christmas in Spain is January 6th.
That's a good point.
So it's like, I don't know, it's kind of what's this weird pagan festival that everybody goes out about on the 25th? It's like, well, we all know the real Christmas is January 6th.
I just find it very strange that it is on at midday or 1 o'clock their time.
I'm sure Robbie Dunne will be able to tell us why. Quick, Tommy, make sure Robbie knows he has to answer that question when he comes on. We're having our production meeting on air again. So you might have noticed all these. These are books. This is Kieran Fallon's book, Jackie Tyrrell's book, The Art of Hurling, which was getting rave reviews from Kieran Shannon in the Examiner yesterday, written by Dara Whelan, who was a former producer of Off the Ball. Shay, which Declan Bogue was tweeting bits out of yesterday, where he was talking about the injection that Rainer Wolfhart gave Shay. And Shay's like, I don't know what was in the injection. I didn't really care. We've got a screenshot, do we? Yeah. Oh, it'll take a minute. But any given Saturday. So there was the point, I wonder, could I find Dr. Rainer Wolfhart in the... Anyway, so Shay's like, I don't really know what's in the injection. And Declan Bogue's making the point, does that mean it was drugs? I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it was drugs.
Well, all the Arsenal players talk about Wenger's first couple of seasons at the club, and they're like, oh yeah, they were giving us this stuff that I didn't know what it was. Vitamins. It was vitamins, is what Wenger said, but we really didn't know.
Yeah.
But like, who cares? The players don't need to know, do they? As long as they're happy. The placebo effect, potentially it was nothing.
Yeah.
Here is an injection of nothing, and I'm going to tell you, the player, that it's going to change your world.
We've been snorting lines with nothing on the way in this morning.
Exactly. The placebo effect is something strong, I can tell you that much. I'll show you a few of these books here as well. We've got New York Fight Nights by Thomas Myler here. Stateside Scraps and Scuffles, that one. J.O.'s book, the hardback right there. Owen Hand is there and thereabouts as well. You've got, at the end of the day, we were chatting to Paul Burns last week, of course, about that book. That's to do with a retirement, a collection of stories from different sports stars who've retired in the last couple of years. We've got Gooch's book. We've got a bit of a schmozzle, GAA Quips and Quotes, which is a handy little book there, a stocking filler it's probably the only one of these books that would fit into your traditional stocking, is what I mean by that. I'll read out one quote from the book. There's a lot of satisfaction because there were times we were really written off. Fellas like Spillane there now were almost taking pity on us. He was thinking there wasn't even one dying kick on us. Who do you think said that? 2009.
Cork?
No, Jack O'Connor said it after that.
Fellas like Spillane.
Yeah,
of course
exactly.
he did. Good man, Jack.
So that's one of a number of quotes in there by Martin O'Duffy in a bit of a schmozzle.
So this is from before Euro 2012, page 368 of Any Given Saturday. Dr. Muller-Wolfhart uses special injections to help people recover from injuries quicker. Usain Bolt and all the German national team use them if they're struggling, and he's got loads of players up and moving again. His injections contain natural ingredients. It's all a bit of a secret as to what they are, but I was desperate to get back training. And so, obviously didn't work for Shay for Euro 2012. Is that a bit harsh? Shay's a friend of the show now, so we're not really allowed to say those things anymore. But yeah, so Declan Bogue pointing out. The other thing that was happening recently, somebody went to Andrew Luck. They were talking about this in the States. So Andrew Luck is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL. Up until last season, he was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. He reset the market. Has still to win anything, but has like a really damaged shoulder and finished last season on injured reserve, and they thought he was going to be ready for the start of this season, and then he's going to be ready for like week 2, week 4. Never made it. Didn't play a minute. Has gone to Europe because they're more cutting edge over there. I wouldn't say cutting edge, but the FDA don't always approve stuff in America that you can get in Europe. And he's gone to Germany, and they were all like, oh, like Kobe went to Germany that time to get his blood spin so he could come back and play and stuff. It's like, clearly in Germany, there is like doping happening, of some of the world's greatest athletes, and America obviously doesn't really care about that kind of out of competition stuff in the way that we're all supposed to care about it in Europe, but lo and behold, Germany seems to be the place to go if you need to get ready for a tournament.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that about Andrew Luck. I didn't know he was out for the season because I was stuck with Jacoby Brissett in my fantasy team for a long time, but that's very strange. I just don't understand that if the FDA has a substance banned and you need to go to Europe to get it, then what the hell is the substance? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. I mean, the implication would be like, oh, we take this stuff seriously in America. Like, I don't know if you've ever had headache tablets in America. They're way better than the stuff you get over here. So I guess it swings and roundabouts. So the reason we have all these books out is not just to brag about the fact that we have them. It's because we're going to give them to one of you out there today. All you have to do is share whatever platform you're watching this on and tell us your own favourite sports book, and we'll compile a bit of a list a little bit later on. It can be from this year, it can be from any year, and we're going to pick a name at random from all of you who share us on your platform this morning, and 22 sports books will be yours. Now, if you want them before Christmas, you're going to have to come collect them. I think you're going to have to come collect them if you want them after Christmas anyway, because we're not posting them out, but we can get them delivered to you at some point. We can work all that stuff out. Again, having the production meeting on air, Ger, good move. One last thing before we leave the NFL, obviously, you know, it's Christmas time. I'm in my Christmas jumper. I've been Colin Kaepernick. I've been on the Kaepernick bandwagon for a long time. I'm a legit 49ers fan, but I'm kind of off the Kaepernick bandwagon because this morning I watched the 4.5 minutes of mic'd up Jimmy Garoppolo, and you know, there's only one true God. It's Jimmy Garoppolo.
Why, you were hoping that Kaepernick might come back and save the 49ers?
Just it's like, no, I mean, I'm never ever going to buy a new Christmas jumper. I'm never going to buy a Jimmy Garoppolo Christmas jumper. This is kind of meaningful in a way.
It's 49ers win the Super Bowl next year. That might change.
Yeah, but this isn't really about like supporting. You know, I'm not really going to get the name of another man on my jumper for like following him. Here's Jimmy. You can just about make out the jawline there. It's that steel silver thing. That's his jawline. That's not actually his helmet.
I'm going to get a Sean Dyche Christmas jumper. That was your Halloween costume as well. And you wore a Donald Trump mask.
Shut up. So, you got to sweat the ass out though, and that's how this thing works. But you know the way you're not supposed to watch porn at work, watching 5.5 minutes of Jimmy Garoppolo mic'd up is unbelievable. It's actually some of the best sports coverage you're ever going to see, because what they do is they take these clips of him talking to individual players. I've just seen the caption. They take these clips of him talking to players, like the Tennessee Titans go up by a point with 1.5 minutes left on the clock, and they cut to Jimmy mic'd up on the sideline talking to Marquise Goodwin, talking to the slot receiver and talking to the offensive line, and he tells them all exactly what he's going to do, and he gives them a little bit of coaching about, like, so if the defensive back is coming to you, you just go like this with the hips, straighten them up, and I'll play it in space for you. And then they show you the video of him doing exactly that to that person a minute later in a no-huddle offense with the game on the line, his first ever home game. So
he's basically got an absolutely gigantic brain.
He's a genius.
Who's a bigger genius, him or Tony Romo?
Well, see, Tony Romo's way older.
I know he is, but I mean, he's obviously got the exact same footballing genes as in the vision, the psychic nature that he's shown as part of his commentary this season, that he's become one of the best commentators in world sports as a result. I hope that
that with Tony Romo it doesn't wear off. That like next season the plays move on, and he's like, oh, I saw this year against that team, and so he's still able to do it in a couple of seasons when they start changing the looks.
I do see people who are saying that Tony Romo is not as good a pundit as people are actually saying, that we've all just got on the Romo bandwagon this season. But no, I'm firmly on the bandwagon. I'm not getting off anytime soon.
Tony Romo is basically Gary Neville. But then I suppose actually I was thinking about this. John Lynch, the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers, is basically Gary Neville. That was what his job was before he became the greatest general manager in the history of football.
Absolutely.
Christmas, who cares?
We may as well give you a rundown of the back pages on the newspapers this morning. We're going to start with the Irish Examiner and show you the front page of their sports section. Heaven's Gate reads the headline this morning. Bristol City's 93rd minute winner dumps Manchester United out of the Carabao Cup. We've also got Courting Coutinho, Liverpool brace for another Barcelona bid for Brazilian ace. While there's a couple of other things down the bottom, Paulie promotion there being the big news story anyway. O'Connell to join Ireland under-20s as assistant coach. And if you went to bed very early last night, you will have missed that news that Leinster prop Healy has been hit with a 3-week suspension. He's banned for Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those, you pick up the extra booking just a week before Christmas, so you don't have to come in on Stephen's Day and play with family.
Yeah, I don't exactly think you do a forearm smash to get off for Christmas. It's too high risk.
It's very high risk. I'm just saying it's not the worst time to be suspended.
True.
I mean, it's obviously absolutely the worst time to be suspended. I'm being completely facetious because it means that all of a sudden Joe Schmidt goes, oh, hang on, that guy could get maybe sent off. Whoa, that's a bit loud. That guy could maybe get sent off in a Six Nations game for me. And oh, look, Jack McGrath's just played really well in these,
that's the thing.
In these games. So in terms of the next paper, I'm just going to look up here what we're supposed to be doing, and I'm going to tell you it's the Irish Times. So this obviously is the report page from the Irish Times, Bristol City. Alvaro Morata with the late winner there for Chelsea, getting them into the last four, and then battle for last year's top goal scorer. Sorry, battle for year's top goal scorer could be decided in the Clasico. This is the made-up calendar year top goal scorer thing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really think anybody cares about, except Cristiano Ronaldo.
Well, Harry Kane obviously cares about it. 50 goals in a year, Harry. How does it feel to be England's greatest ever footballer? Ask a question about potentially knocking Alan Shearer off his perch. Cut to a photo of Alan Shearer laughing and sniggering with Gary Lineker and Ian Wright. Right. That's how the entire conversture works.
That's how serious it is. And then Leinster ease clear in head-to-heads. This is the Leinster-Munster professional era stuff. Obviously the preview of this is starting now because really no one's going to be paying any attention to anything else that happens in the world of sport. Apart from tomorrow night, obviously, when we've got Brian O'Driscoll talking rugby and the live game between Liverpool and Arsenal.
Yep. Now, on the back of the Irish Daily Mail, it's very, very smart. So I'm just going to cover the picture. The headline says, it's City 2, United 1. But then you look at the picture and it's Bristol City, not Manchester City. And in the subhead it says, but this time it's Bristol who leave Mourinho floor. Very clever. Also, revitalised Healy stopped in tracks by ban, it says on the back of the Irish Daily Mail this morning. OK, so let's go on to the Star. Rockin' Robins. In terms of teams like Bristol City, having a nickname and a home ground, they're pretty good for headline writers. Yeah, absolutely. Rockin' Robins, probably one of my favourites there this morning.
Stephen, donkey jibe upset my family. I mean, I would say donkey if I was being true to my Kildare heritage, and I probably should just stick with it. Stephen, donkey jibe upset my family. What do you say?
Donkey?
Do you?
I've never heard donkey before.
Really?
Yes, like that. It's just clearly not how it's pronounced.
It rhymes with monkey.
Okay, I haven't actually thought about it that way. My mind is blown. I'll try and revert to that soon once I get my thoughts
Tommy
back.
says he's heard donkey, but what do you say?
It's donkey.
That's because he's American, really.
Maybe I might just start saying monkey as well. On the back of the Mirror it goes Corey Gorey, Man United, and Louis Swan Hall, Premier League's bottom club, ditched manager Clement and turned a veteran Dutchman.
This is good. I mean, I like that. Corey Gorey, Man United is good.
It is good, and so is Louis Swan Hall.
Yeah.
But it actually should be Louis Swanhal, shouldn't it?
If you say it.
To get it properly. No. But I really want Van Gaal back. Please get him back in the Premier League Swansea. Please bring him back. Do you
think he bothered taking a phone call from Swansea? Do you think he likes the notion of getting the Swansea job? Or is he still lying on his lounger? He's definitely still lying on his lounger regardless. He might have picked up the phone while still lying on the lounger. That's him leaning over to get a drink, just in case you were wondering. City KO Jose again, but this time it's Bristol. That was obviously, the lads were on the WhatsApp group going, no, Bristol City, Man City. And then time up for Clem, that's Paul Clement, and Clup and Ox Slayer. Yeah, that's the same one they're going with in the back of the Herald. Klopp backs Ox to shine. Liverpool boss demands goals from ex-gunner ahead of Emirates' return. You've also got the Healy story there. And hang on, I'm not having this. Klopp and Ox Slayer. What do you mean? It makes no sense. He's Klopp is not an Ox Slayer. He's boosting Ox. Ox is the Slayer. He's going to slay Arsenal. Okay, but come on, Klopp is not an Ox. It makes no. Maybe he means slay in the kind of millennial cool term of slay. You know, as in you do a good job, like you're killing. Klopp would be the Slayer. Yeah, fair. No, it doesn't. Someone is slaying Ox, and Ox is the Slayer. It doesn't make let's just keep it with the Herald one that Klopp backs Ox to shine. That is actually what's going on here. He isn't slaying the Ox, but is patronising hand on the head there on the back page of the Herald. Yeah, you've got the London Times first there. Oh no, I've got the London Times there. So this is that awful story. Racist jailed for assault on Sterling. Raheem Sterling was kicked 4 times and racially abused in an attack by a convicted football hooligan who was jailed for 16 weeks yesterday. Great that something has happened really relatively swiftly with this. That's George Calkin's story on the back of the Times. And then also they've got the Cian Healy story. Healy banned for the next 3 Derby games, so it is a relatively important period of time for Healy. You would expect, though, he'll get back in for the Champions Cup games. He's not going to miss any of the Champions Cup games, and that will give him an opportunity to re-establish his stranglehold on his position in the front row for Ireland in advance of the Six Nations.
There is a perfume ad on the back of the Irish Independent, but we've made that joke too many times over the past couple of weeks, so we'll show you the inside of the Irish Indo and its provinces reap benefits of following Joe's Gospel. That's Neil Francis' column, and Cian Tracy writing this morning about Astute O'Connell was always destined to bring on-field inspiration into a coaching role. O'Connell, of course, appointed as assistant coach with the Ireland under-20s team just yesterday.
Yeah, so we'll talk about all that stuff with Keith Wood. Frano's point is basically that Cian Healy was dumb doing what he did, and Joe Schmidt doesn't like dumb players, that somebody like Dan Coles would not be in his team because of the amount of penalties that he gave away against Munster, for example, at the weekend. And so does Schmidt really want somebody who is liable to do that? Because Healy should have been red carded for that, and the 3-match ban, it's actually a 2-match ban, and then they've given it to him for an aggravated disciplinary history, despite the fact that he pled guilty. So, you know, it's a bit of a tightrope Healy's on at the moment. He's going to have to very quickly prove to Joe Schmidt that that's not going to happen again. Yeah,
anybody who is very kind of open to risk is not a Joe Schmidt player, and Cian Healy has certainly showed that he is a little bit of a risk in that way. But do we not appreciate the passion of a forearm smash? Wearing his heart in his sleeve.
We do.
It's Christmas fixtures. You got to get a forearm smash in there to show that you really care.
Yeah, it's just too close now to the Six Nations, the 3-game ban.
Probably a little bit too close.
Ready to prosper, Ram and Rory on the road to riches in 2018. American trio Dustin Johnson, Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas fill the first 3 places in the world rankings, but 2018 could be a year dominated by a pair of power-packed Europeans. Really, it's like, there's not that much happening in the world of betting today, according to the Racing Post. That golf is on the back page. It's unusual.
We'll have a look at the UK broadsheets, and on the front of the Daily Telegraph sports section, King Corey reads the headline. It is, of course, that unbelievable result yesterday for Bristol City beating Manchester United in additional time. Although it could have been 3-1. Like that goal that was ruled out for Bristol City.
Yeah.
I think it was incorrectly ruled out. Sergio Romero throws the ball off the arse of this Bristol City player. I can't remember who it was. He doesn't actually get him in the backswing. He's definitely going forward with his arm when it makes contact with the Bristol City player.
Unnamed friend,
yeah. So it should have been 3-1, but anyway, it's done. It's more dramatic. It was a beautiful, beautiful night for football.
All right, going to get to Keith Wood in a minute. Finally now for the broadsheets. FIFA fired the doctor looking at the Russia doping claims. No explanation given to Professor after 22 years. So the former chief medical officer at FIFA was investigating the alleged Russian state doping of footballers when his work was abruptly terminated under the presidency of Gianni Infantino in November last year. There's nothing to see here, folks.
It's very interesting. I know Infantino did a big clear out in February last year. But sort of the fact that this happened 9 months later is very interesting. And also the fact that it's over a year later we actually find out about this thing. It's an exclusive by The Guardian this morning to actually get that information. There's definitely more in that. If that guy is willing to talk, it'd be a very interesting interview.
Let's just briefly remind everybody exactly what happened. Russia got the Sochi Olympics, spent about 20 billion on it, systematically found a way to cheat and dope by tampering with the B samples, which allowed their athletes to cheat with whatever drugs they wanted, knowing full well that they would subsequently be able to. They've subsequently won the rights to host the Soccer World Cup while Sepp Blatter was the president of FIFA. And now it turns out the person investigating the potential for systemic doping amongst their footballers has been removed by FIFA, the organising body of the Football World Cup. Nothing bad is possibly going to happen. But I would bet on Russia in many matches in the coming World Cup. Certainly their first game, I would wager a lot of money that they're going to win that game.
You should start working for the Racing Post. Prophesise that now.
I mean, like, is profiting from corruption, that's bad, right? That's not really the Olympic ideals.
Well, it's the whole point of corruption, though.
Yes, it is. All right, 5-3. No, that's not right. You can get us here at Off The Ball on Twitter. You can get us here at Off The Ball on Twitter. You can get us on Facebook.com/Off The Ball. There is a Christmas giddiness here. Was there a Christmas giddiness yesterday when Les Kiss met Oisín Langan at Kingspan media event? Obviously Kingspan are the sponsors, and they throw a shindig in Dublin once a year to introduce some stuff that they want the players and management to talk about. Oisín sat down with Les Kiss and talked Jared Payne in particular.
First and foremost, the whole process has been about the player first, the welfare of Jared, and that would stand for any player in any situation of an injury. But look, there's been a process that's been in place, and a lot of investigation and getting the right consults, the right care given to Jared, because first and foremost, he's a good person who wants to put the jersey on. He's got a young family, and we have to make sure it fits and works for him. And yes, he has been training for a number of weeks now, and doing more and more contact. He's getting closer and closer. That's all I can say. The dangerous thing is to put timelines on it, but we would hope that we can see more progression over the next couple of weeks and see where we get to. But we're optimistic. We're working with Jared on this. He's been brilliant. It's not been easy by any stretch of the imagination, but he knows that his welfare is first and foremost. And
I appreciate it's kind of a weird one when we're asking you about the health of a player, because essentially it's none of our business. I wouldn't ask about any other professional, but I guess sport is just different. Has there been a conversation with Jared about, look, Jared, maybe it might be best for you if you didn't continue, or have you had that conversation? Has he brought it up? Have you brought it up?
No, it hasn't been part of it. You're right. When you're talking about medical situations, you've got to be careful about how you articulate those things and how far you go with your explanations. But I also understand that people want to know. And
they're worried as well. If he's out that long with a head issue, people they do worry. And you've heard the talk about Johnny Sexton and other players have had issues. And it's we've all seen the movie Concussion. And I appreciate that's a movie, but based on reality, so people they do worry.
Yeah, and people would like to know what their players are going to be doing for them in their team, and it's important that the right level of information is given and doesn't create storylines or headlines that aren't real.
That full Les Kiss interview obviously available if you subscribe to our rugby podcasts at offtheball.com or wherever you get your podcasts now. Keith Wood, happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas, how are you?
Is that...
I'm actually sweating quite heavily. I'm not used to putting anything on my head. It's a bit unusual.
I know. Christmas jumpers are way too heavy, it turns out. They're built for outside instead of inside. Is that claw over your shoulder on Santa's knee?
Hang on, let me look. See if I can bring that all front and centre. There you go.
Who's in the middle?
Poor Santa Claus. I tell you what, he nearly fainted with the weight of the two of us sitting on his last. Disturbingly, I have one of those for every Christmas since I've come back to Ireland, with myself and Claude sitting on Santa's knee.
Everybody needs Christmas traditions, right? That's the whole point of this thing.
Yes, which will happen again, of course, this year. So,
well, let's move on and just talk briefly about Jared Payne, because obviously for Jared Payne getting selected to go on the Lions trip was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime, but he hasn't played a minute of rugby since. And, you put this together with the confusion surrounding Johnny Sexton and just that general sense of rugby really still groping its way through the issue of head injuries. And it's a terrible look for the sport at the moment.
It is quite hard. Actually, Oisin touched on a point there that in many respects you would never ever want to discuss somebody's health. You kind of talk about injuries a little bit more specifically, and there's been a bit of confusion over whether this is anything to do with concussion at all, or whether it's just symptomatic of something else. And that, like I always say, when there's a void, when there's no information being put in, everybody starts to speculate. And the one thing that we can say with great certainty is we want to make certain that he is looked after properly. And it's taken an awful long time. It looks hard again from the outside because we don't have any information, but the duty of care for the player is absolutely paramount.
Should we be looking at that, Keith, about how much information is available to the public? Because you alluded to it yourself there. Speculation can often be more dangerous than some of the darker actual details. And to stop that speculation, potentially these provinces being upfront and telling the public what exactly is going on could be the way forward.
Well, it could be, but again, we still go back to the duty of care. You don't want to highlight a very particular injury and say that you have a weakness in one spot that could be exacerbated the next time you go and play. And it's one of those kind of, I think, very difficult lines of communication. It's where I think it's where sport struggles an awful lot, and rugby in particular, but especially like it's heightened at the moment, because anytime we start talking about anything to do with head injuries, with the concussions, with different elements like that, with the safety of the game, it puts everybody under pressure. And it's funny, I would have been a kind of slightly gamekeeper or turned poacher or the other way around this time, because I would have wanted to have played at any stage. I wouldn't have wanted to not go off. And I'm not saying I've covered up for concussions. And we were actually very keenly aware at that time, and because we're very fortunate in Dr. Mick Malloy that we had with us for a long time, was just so hot on this topic always. But on the same token, we just can't have the amount of concussions or HIAs that are required in the game, which still, for me, means we have to make a small change to what happens with the laws. So for me, the topic still has to come down. Though. I don't know how we do that. I mean, if it was a very simple thing, it would have been done 3 or 4 years ago when this really started to a fore. It hasn't, but I still feel the hot should go down a bit.
There's two things really. The point you make about not wanting to highlight a weakness, like that is something that I guess outside of the professional sport bubble we forget about. But like you look at last weekend, Aaron Rodgers, the Green Bay quarterback, comes back having had 12 pins inserted in his shoulder. In the second quarter, the Carolina Panthers are shoving him to the ground to make sure that those 12 pins still work perfectly fine. And no doubt that's how professional sport works. So if we tell everybody every intimate detail of what the injuries are, the opposition will target that, because that's how the sport works. It's grim, but it's the truth. And the other point about the not having a lot of information is we kind of have got used to the provinces telling us about people being in the return to play protocol, and the word concussion isn't actually ever mentioned. And that to me just feels a little bit like an uncertainty on their part. And it doesn't really feel like there's an honesty involved in that part of it either, that there's almost a little bit of spin. Oh, he's grand, he's just in the return to play protocols. No actual suggestion that the word concussion is involved, and that everything that minor brain injury / actual brain injury entails.
Well, I still think we're in that space where we're not entirely sure. And on the match 2 weeks ago, the Leinster Exeter game, or the previous one at the Conway one, the Munster game, when he got hit, he hit the ground, he was dead still, there was no movement. There's no HIA assessment needed then. That's if there is a doubt as to whether there's any concussion. If there's no doubt, you don't have to do the assessment. Then you're concussed, then you know you're doing something else. So the HIA are, for me, they're a very grey area. And that's the issue under which Barry O'Driscoll stepped away from World Rugby and in their medical department. For a very simple reason. He said, if you think he's concussed, that's a fear of concussion, then you get him off the field. So it's that definition of treatment. I still think we're in that early stage. We're not quite sure on all those definitions where they actually stack up within looking after the duty of care. Yeah. So I would say rugby has been not ahead of the game, because we consistently make mistakes with different guys because you don't see everything that happens. But they're trying, but it needs to try a little bit more. Because I must say, if we forget all the rights, wrongs, the technique, all the pros, everything that's on it, we can't afford the game to have a couple of guys going off in every game. That's just wrong. We can't do that.
We might just try getting the audio fixed there for you. We'll come back to you in a minute, Keith. But I guess that's an important point about the whole fact about the fact that it's still relatively early on. The difficulty with that is that you need to show the signs of progress really quickly, that we understand the HIA is either fit for purpose or it isn't. And if it is, this is how we're recalibrating it. And if it's not, we're saying, okay, this is the new thing. Obviously, Ross Tucker has written the rule book on this and has talked in great detail about how if you don't have a HIA, players take too many risks and they hide things. The HIA is actually a way of us uncovering exactly the point Keith was making there about, not that you would have hidden things, but you want to play. And so I think ultimately you do hide things. That's kind of how that ends up working. But so we've re-established contact there with Keith. Just a bit of, it sounds like it was raining there in the background, Keith.
Re-established with me moving a little bit closer to the
perfect. Gotta try these new things,
Absolutely.
I mean, the internet's never going to take off, we all know that.
They even have what's this? They even have the internet on computers now. It's not a Homer Simpson line.
Perfect. Right, so we should talk about Cian Healy because obviously he's been banned for 3 games. It was a 2-game ban and then he got 1 extra game ban for basically being Cian Healy, which, you know, feels a little bit unfair considering the fact that he did fess up to it. But I guess this is the whole point, that they're stamping this stuff out and they're trying to make the game safer, and to make the game safer, whenever an incident like this happens, you throw the book at it. Manu Tuilagi, on the other hand, manages to get away with not getting a yellow card for his offence.
Well, I think it goes down to the interpretation of the referee and of the committee that looks at this, the citing committee. If they consider it a red card incident, then I think your past performance in this regard comes into case. If they don't consider it a red card, then it doesn't, and it doesn't matter. And I think that's pretty much that was the ruling on both of those. When I looked at the first one, we were commentating on the game. Didn't have a great picture. I didn't think it was a red card at all, but because I just didn't think there was a huge amount of force in it. But then when you're looking at it afterwards, you say, okay, yeah, that's, we're trying to tidy this up. We need to make certain that doesn't happen. Tough for Cian Healy, but that's the nature of it, and you just have to be very careful of keeping your composure in the game.
Neil Francis has written a column today where he says that Joe Schmidt will really look at this type of stuff with a very jaundiced eye, and that this would jeopardise Healy being first choice, that the whole modus operandi of the Schmidt era has been to reduce penalties. We had the least penalties of all of the teams in the Six Nations, and we've won a load of games where afterwards you look at the penalty count and we've had 4 or 5 and the other team have had 14 or 15. That discipline is the key thing on which everything is built. Discipline to the game plan, discipline to the set piece, and discipline within the individual set plays. Is that true? Is there a risk that Healy ends up costing himself the starting position, even though at the moment it looks like he's playing way better than Jack McGrath?
I don't think in the short term it makes that. He is playing incredibly well. He looks very fit. He looks very focused. This is a blip that could be the reminder he needs, that he just needs to tidy up his game in that respect. But for me, he's the standout at the moment, and we are lucky in loose heads. We have a lot of them in the country, and if he was to continue to do it, he could drop down that pecking order very quickly. But at the moment, he's standout number 1 in the team. Okay,
so that discipline issue is something that Joe Schmidt has a word with him about and says, look, this isn't ideal here. The whole point of this is that this doesn't happen. Or is it, we know that Schmidt has those conversations, so you would expect it to come up?
I would expect it to come up, of course it would. I would expect it to come up every week, not just this week, and not just because he's got a ban on the end of it. And knowing a little bit about Joe Schmidt's attention, I think this comes up every single week. So whether a penalty has been given or not been given, I would say, listen, we can't, if that goes a little bit further, that's going to be a penalty. We can't afford to have penalties. And I will say that in the last couple of years, there's been a marked reduction in the amount of penalties that the Irish teams are giving away, not just Ireland. So there is a bit of a knock-on effect for that. And I just thought that, after all the baiting of the referees by Matt O'Connor in the previous 2 weeks, that Munster were able to keep all their attention exactly right and to give away such a few amount of penalties, and B, it frustrated Leicester into giving away more.
Keith, I don't want to justify what Cian Healy did, but I think there is a lot of evidence to show that Cian Healy almost cares more about rugby at the moment than he has done at any point in his life. You look at that disallowed try even a couple of weeks ago, and you look how viscerally he celebrated that moment and how that was like his re-arrival back into the Leinster team. Do you agree with that? Do you think Cian Healy's playing close to the edge at the moment, which can also lead to positives, of course? It's not all about forearm smashes when you're playing on the edge. To me, it seems that this is a front row who's really hoping to nail down his place and hoping to keep Jack McGrath at arm's length.
Yeah, I don't quite buy that at all. I think that this was an isolated incident in the game, a game that goes at 1,000,000 miles an hour. You can almost see the joy on his face for getting back to play. He had a doubt over whether he'd actually play at all before. So, and I can remember even from my own career and at the end of it, that when you had lots of injuries and you're going out to play, you'd say, well, I may not have any more these days. I'm going to leave everything out on the field. He seems to be in that. He's enjoying the fact he's playing, but he is kind of using every minute of it too. You know, it's kind of it's feeding the beast in many respects. I just think it's a joy to watch him play. I mean, he looks like he's slimmed down a lot. He looks fitter. He looks like he's bouncing around the field. I don't think he needs to tone it down. He just needs to take out, like, that one is just, that's sloppy, you know. In stark contrast to someone like Dylan Hartley, who has tried to tidy up his game huge amount because his disciplinary record was awful. And I actually think it's detracted from his game. I think he's maybe toned it down too much, and he isn't as effective as a player as he was a couple of years ago. So that's the balance in it. Are you effective with the amount of time you stay on the field, or sent off? No effective.
Did you agree with Brian O'Driscoll's tweet about the game going soft when Tuilagi got cited?
I don't think the game is going soft. I do think we have to tidy it up, and I'm convinced about that. As the father of 3 sons who play, and I watch a fair amount of underage rugby and training sessions and stuff like that. What happens on a Saturday on international rugby or professional rugby happens on a Sunday in an under-12 match. So we just need to make that tackle a bit lower and a bit safer. So we don't know that will tidy up every element of it. But this head-to-head contact stuff is... I mean, I agreed with Matt O'Connor. I didn't agree with him on very many things of his rant after the match in Thomond Park. But I did because I've been harping on about this for a long time, saying that the duty of care making a tackle is for the guy who's tackling, and his head needs to be below the shoulders on the point of tackle. We've then seen for the last 2 weeks a lot of head-to-head collisions. Now, I just think that needs to be brought down a bit lower, and I know it'll make a change to the game, and it really will. And I have to say, this season, I was actually going to use an old line from the Fast Show. This season I'll be mostly wearing Izzy Mayaki, but no, this season rugby is it's brilliant. I mean, the standard of the game is just fantastic, and the quality of a lot of the games, I think, is up on a fairly big level.
Just on that point as well, Keith, I'm interested to get your take on just literally the quality we have across the front row all around the country at the moment, and in particular Kevin O'Byrne on Sunday, who a lot of people might not have even heard about before. Like, he was unbelievably dynamic on Sunday. You think about him as coming in as a replacement at number 2, and you're thinking, right, this guy is just going to do the basics right. He makes a number of carries which are incredibly impressive, and suddenly you're looking at just a huge amount of depth in that position at the moment, which is great to see.
Yeah, we have a bit of depth there, not a huge amount, and let's not lose the run of ourselves altogether. I thought he played really well, and I would have gone with the same idea as you. Get on the field, do the things well, have an all rumble if you can. He had no interest in that, which I love. That's the sentiment that a player who's played very little rugby at this level takes on. He said, "Yeah, I'm going to make a mark, but I'm going to make a mark with a level of composure and still do his basics." That's a mature attitude, but equally well, I'm very loath to get far too excited when a guy plays one good game and we all say don't worry, we've no issues at the depth in hooker. Rory Best has been out injured for quite a while. Sean Cronin has been out of favour. You know, we could do with a couple of more guys putting their hands up there.
Yeah, Sean Cronin still had a bit of move in him even after he'd lost a tooth last weekend, so hopefully his form is coming back to the level where he'll be back in the reckoning, at least for a position on the bench. And just to ask you about the announcement that Paul O'Connell is going to be involved with the Ireland under-20s. We had him at a roadshow a while back, and at that he was saying that he was doing a little bit less coaching and a little bit less involvement with Munster than he'd like. It doesn't look like there's a clear pathway, and I know obviously he's got a lot going on in his life and he could have a job with a bunch of teams. Leicester were clearly interested in him, and a bunch of other teams I know were interested in him as well. But it doesn't look like there's a clear pathway really for a lot of Irish coaches to get into the coaching setup. So they kind of need to do a bit of this part-time stuff with Ireland here, or go abroad in the way that Ronan O'Gara has done.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say that there's a clear pathway because every player or ex-player looks at it a bit differently, to be honest, Jerry, you know, as to whether this is exactly what they want to do. And I will tell you that once you retire, you end up going in a period of doubt as to exactly what it is you're going to do and what it is you want to do. So I think you need to say, if Paul O'Connell had, as soon as he retired, said, all I want to do is coach, I think that would then exist. Now, but where does it exist? within the present structure that we have at the moment. There are so many teams in Ireland. We want to be able to have players of that quality if they want to coach and if they have capacity. I think you make. I think this is appropriate for each person that comes along. I don't know that we have to set up this whole new system, because in that stage you're just giving jobs to the boys, and I don't think it is that situation. He's taken his time to figure out what it is he wants to do. He does want to coach, so this is one of his routes to say, well, I want to do this now, and I'm in a particular period of my life, that's what I'm going to go and do. So look, it's taken a bit of time, but I think you have to remember, without paying the poor mouth here for these guys, they've done very well. They've made a decent amount of money. Their life given for the previous 10 or 12, 14 years is now totally changed. Like, it's a shock to the system. So you can't just say, I'm going to flip a switch and this is what I'm going to do going forward. You have to spend a bit of time reflecting on what it is you want to do.
Yeah.
It's done. I know Munster is incredibly supportive of it, because if he's involved in Ireland, they would want to have him there, and that was why there was the time role in the academy. But look, he is so much off the game, and in so many different ways.
Yeah, so I think that's the point, right? And I'd say there are a bunch of other players who are about to retire who might be interested in getting involved in coaching. But I've had this conversation before with a former Leinster player who retired and went into the real world, and he was saying that he looks at Leo Cullen and the pressures that Leo has and thinks, okay, so Leo is at the top of the tree effectively. He could get the Ireland job eventually, but if things go badly at Leinster, he gets sacked, and then he's got to uproot his family and move away. There isn't really that kind of, there's no job security in the job, and there's also no guarantee that you're going to get to that top level. But the corollary of that is that when the jobs come up in Ireland, like the Connacht job or the Munster job, there are no candidates really who we have trained in our system who are viable candidates to take over from Pat Lam and Rassie Erasmus. We did have to go, or David Nucifora felt like he had to go around the world to find candidates, and we don't really have a system in place, or I don't know if it's a diploma in coaching or something, just to kind of go, okay, we understand that you guys want to be coaches, here's what you should do, and here's our investment in Irish rugby coaching at the professional level. It's a weird thing to want to get involved in, because obviously they're all individuals at that point.
Well, I think if you look at, let's look at Munster even for an example. Anthony Foley went through the system. He was brought in the academy, and he moved his way up to become head coach. Felix Jones got injured very early. He had already expressed a wish and shown an aptitude that he wanted to be involved, and they saw merit immediately. I think it's on a case-by-case basis. Jerry Flannery is the exact same. And those two guys have carried a huge amount of the can in the last 12 months. And I know Rassie Erasmus gets a lot of credit, and he did a huge amount of leadership with it and gave them great support. But they did a huge amount of the coaching within it. So that's one of the routes into which you can do it. But like, if you're to suddenly change it today and say, well, we have another 4 guys we want to put into that system doesn't exist, because we've only got 4 professional teams in Ireland. So Ron Nagar has taken the other route. He's decided that, yes, I want to go, I want to coach, and I want to get another experience. And I would say for a lot of players who have played, they need to be able to have a breadth of experience. They need to have played in other countries. They need to see different styles, because they could come back as an example to Munster and say, actually, the Munster style is best, but we're going to make a couple of tweaks to it. Or they could get a huge amount of other information that comes in. So, look, I think coaching is an incredibly tough job. And I said it on the press conference when I retired, that I was one of the lucky ones. I wasn't going to waste the next 5 years of my life proving how crap a coach I was, because I just didn't have it. I didn't want to do it in that fashion, and I think I was lucky to, because I was in love with the game. I still am, but it's changed, and I didn't have to live it every minute of every day. And it's a really, really tough job. If you look at what happened in Ireland over the last 10 years, if you were an Irish coach and you got sacked, or you didn't get your contract renewed, like Eddie O'Sullivan or like Declan Kidney, you were virtually persona non grata and couldn't get a job after it. And yet those 2 guys were guys who delivered really heavily for Ireland. So that, on that side of it, is the one that I don't like. I think they have an institutional memory, and they have a skill set that should be reused within some coaching structures in Ireland, and it would be in relation to other coaches. Yeah,
no, for sure. Definitely, it's an issue that we will undoubtedly revisit. But in the meantime, Happy Christmas, Keith, and thanks very much.
Happy Christmas, gents.
Enjoy that encounter with Claw and Santa, wherever it takes you. Inside Keith Wood's man cave there.
Yeah, absolutely. What a man cave it is. I think was there a Jack Nicklaus signature there as well up on his clipboard behind him?
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I do think that the IRFU should invest some money in some kind of system where they anoint 3 or 4 people who get on that pathway, and it's a year or an 18-month or a 2-year thing where they give you access to the Ireland setup and the 4 provinces, where you go and you spend some time with the 4 provinces, and you also, like, obviously Joe Schmidt has to sit in this interview panel to allow you in to see what his training sessions are like, and you've got to sign, you become an IRFU employee, but at the end of that 12-month period or 18-month period, you've been through a cycle, and then they belt you out into the real world and say, right, go off, go and get a job, go on.
Yeah.
And then you take in another 4 people and you go. So these are the Irish coaches who have the Irish system in mind, who hopefully at some point in the 5 to 10 year period will go away, conquer the world, and are then potential candidates down the road. Because Leo Cullen was a risk, and Anthony Foley was a risk, and ultimately they had to get Razzie in to help. And it was interesting, Jerry Flannery gets brought up as well, but he did go off and become a strength and conditioning person who ended up working at Arsenal before he gets to come back. And Felix Jones might just be one of those outliers who is such a genius that he's like, yeah, I can just walk in and do that,
Maybe. There will be outliers. I think it's a good idea for sure, because I find the O'Connell move very interesting in the sense that it's an international setup, as in you would learn a lot and a lot quicker if you were in with a province, I suspect, because you just got more games and you've got players at the top level, they're not still developing, so you get to watch top coaches deal with the top players, because as an assistant in your first job there is a good bit of observation and just being a sponge at times.
The last time that we did an interview with Leo Cullen, we just did it in the change rooms because it was the best place for sound, but there was a bunch of coaches over from Japan who were doing CPD, continuous professional development, and Leo was just saying, yeah, it's something that we all do as well, that actually, we go away and we spend a bit of time in other sports organisations around the world picking up stuff. It's like Roy Keane, when he was doing his coaching badges, ended up with the All Blacks. And like, there is that possibility for that to become a systemic thing, that the IRFU decide, do you think you want to be a coach? Do you have an immediate job? No, okay, well, there's a pathway here that we can actually upskill you. And I don't know, maybe it's pie in the sky and they don't have a spare £500,000 to do it, but we know they're rich, so they obviously do have a spare £500,000. Anyway, loads of people coming in. Our book competition here is the 22 shortlisted books on the Eir Sport Book of the Year award. Some quick comments on that. Shay has a book out. I never knew, says Alan Young. Veronica Cassidy says, Philly McMahon, the choice from this year. I was Born to Run is the best of all time. Sorry, I liked Born to Run. Born to Run, A Hidden Tribe, Super Athletes, and the Greatest Race the World Has Never Seen, from Christopher McDougall. That sounds like something we need to dig out. A lot of people saying Rough Ride and Seabiscuit. Lantern Rouge by Max Leonard, says Cormac Sheehan, which is the story of the guy who finishes last in the Tour de France. That's what he's called, the Lantern Rouge.
Yeah, of course. That'd actually be a very interesting one, as in, because to actually finish is the key part of that, but then to be the last person back it's just such a grueling thing, and you've got that honour of finishing, but then you've also got their version of the wooden spoon, the Lantern Rouge, it's just pain for nothing. Well, not really, actually. If I finished the Tour de France and I got the Lantern Rouge, I'd be pretty proud of myself.
You're in Wikipedia for sure every year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. It's an achievement. Right, so some Jordan Larmour here, speaking with Oisín at the Leinster Press Day, and not Jordan Larmour, or Larmour, as Tommy keeps calling him.
Yeah, of course. It's a massive rivalry. Munster-Leinster, it always has been, and we love playing them. It's a tough battle every time. They really put it up to us every time. Last season was a really tough game down there. But yeah, going down there, Thomond Park, Stephen's Day, it's going to be huge for us. And it'll be great to get the win. They're going to be tough to beat. Haven't lost at home yet this season. And everyone's really looking forward to the challenge.
Did you grow up watching Munster-Leinster games, and if so, is there any ones that stand out? Maybe 08, I'm sure you would have been quite young at the time. 06 obviously wouldn't stand out too much for Leinster fans, but yet they remember it for the kind of what it sparked that came a couple of years later. What are your memories of it as a fan watching rugby growing up?
The biggest memory I have, and I was in the Viva, I think it was, or it could have been Croke Parker, and it was in Brian Driscoll got that intercept. Ronald Garrett threw it, And just every time I think of Munster and Leinster, I think of that.
Yeah.
Because I was at that game with all my family, and just watching that, kind of like I've always wanted to play for Leinster, and growing up watching all the players like Johnny, Brian Driscoll, Issa, all the players, Rob Carney, I always wanted to do what they're doing and play with them. And now I have that opportunity to, and it's really good, and I'm loving every minute of it. And they're all so helpful. Like, the environment in here is really good. Everyone's looking to help each other. Everyone's honest with each other. If you're stepping out of line, you get told. But it's all good. Like, everyone's on your side. And it's really cool. And that's probably the biggest memory that stands out to me about Leinster and Munster. Like,
Jordan Larmour there, rhymes with armour, like it looks like.
Exactly, you just pronounce it as it's written.
I think everybody was like, oh, we've got some French lad playing full back who's got a French twist on the wing, and it's not.
Yeah, you may as well, if you're going to call it Larmour, you may as well just put in the apostrophe after the L and just go full French with it. No, it's Larmour. Let's just kill this here and now.
Good potential marketing in the future.
Yeah, it's mine. That's copyrighted right there, the L apostrophe idea.
You were definitely the first one to think of that.
Probably the only one ever, but I'm going to keep that one under wraps.
All right, amazing prize courtesy of Eir Sport to solve all your Christmas need gifts for the sports dork in your life. 22 books, the long list for the Eir Sport Book of the Year award, and some great stuff. I've already talked about what. So Shay Given Shay's a book out. Did you know that? This one here is a social and cultural history. Irish soccer migrants. That, I think, is Richie Sadler on the front of it. This book has its origins in a FIFA Haviland Research Scholarship awarded to the author in 2013. Well, that doesn't happen very often, and it's published by UCC, so that one looks pretty interesting. Yoink. So suddenly we've got 21 books to give away this year for the Eir Sport Book of the Year Awards. What have you got?
I mentioned a couple of these earlier. The ones I didn't, you've got The Ascent, which is like one of the most acclaimed books of the year, Barry Ryan's book. Also, I would argue, is it the nicest
cover?
Is it the nicest cover?
I mean, we don't judge a book by its cover on this show. Well, we do, of course. But yeah, it is pretty nice.
If we're judging a book by cover, nice font, very nice font actually. So well done to whoever you got to design that book, Barry Ryan. It's a supposedly brilliant book as well. I haven't got around to reading it yet, but I think it's going to be the Christmas book this year. Also, the GAA Immortals, another one I didn't mention earlier on. John Scally with that. You've got Rory's Stories, Guide to the GAA. Another one there, and The Choice by Philly McMahon, Eir Sports Book of the Year. So Eir have donated all these books to us. They say, oh, we've got 22, we're not going to pick our favourite, but they literally have picked their favourite. It's Philly's book, which they announced as the winner last week. What else have you got?
Tommy, what was the book that didn't make the list that you wanted? Centaur by Declan Murphy. It is a stunning book. We had him in. He basically dies having been kicked in the head by a horse, and then he recovers, but the recovery changes his brain. He becomes a completely different person. Rides one more race, wins it. I mean, maybe it wasn't that competitive a race. And then immediately retires and becomes like a property magnate, and now lives this amazing life between New York and Barcelona. It's an unbelievable story.
It was up for the UK Sports Book of the Year, actually.
So it's still there, is it? Has that been announced?
I'm not actually sure. I don't think it has been announced yet.
Yeah, we can check that. So this one, a very personal book for Donald McAnallen about his brother Cormac, The Pursuit of Perfection, the life, death and legacy of Cormac McAnallen. Donald shared a room with Cormac, and obviously Cormac is just an icon of GAA, and so it's great that there is a book about his life, and that book is fantastic. So if you want something a bit different from the Colin Cooper and the standard autobiography, then that obviously is a very personal labour of love for Donald McAnallen. So we wish him all the best with that. So loads of people, so we were asking you basically to share whatever platform you were watching us on this morning, and to tweet us your favourite book and your favourite sports book of all time. The Bloodied Field by Michael Foley, says Seamus Barry. I haven't actually read The Bloodied Field, but Mick Foley's Offaly book is absolutely sensational. It's still my favourite GAA book of all time. So The Bloodied Field is on my list. Pat Spillan's book from many moons ago, says Mark McCormack. Great read.
Really?
Wow.
I would never have thought it would have been a great read. Potentially it is. Rory
Fallon says Zlatan's autobiography is my favourite. So Zlatan's autobiography is literally a work of fiction, but I don't care. Like, that's kind of in keeping with who Zlatan is, right? This is my book. It's not real, but I mean, it's real in my head. Yeah,
it's in keeping for him, but it's not exactly a hugely fulfilling thing if you've got all these great stories to tell and they're fake. Like, a great story is a great story from a sports person because it's the sports person who is at the centre of the story. But if the story doesn't exist and the sports person isn't at the centre of the story, So what's the point?
Whose reality is important here, though?
The actual reality. No, the reality of reality.
That's objective. I mean,
but it's not Zlatan's reality. It's Zlatan's fiction, and it's not probably not even Zlatan.
You're living in the fact-based world here.
Yeah.
I mean, Zlatan, like the CIA, lives in a different alternative reality.
But did Zlatan actually come up with those stories, or was it the guy who wrote the book?
A better reality. I think it was a combination of both.
Exactly. So,
Red Mist, the story of Saipan, a football civil war, says Alan Mahi. Lighthearted take on that time. Yeah, I remember that. Somebody O'Callaghan, I think, wrote it. Or maybe it was called Green Mist. He says. Red mist was the mist that fell on Roy Keane. Green mist was the mist that fell on him while he played for Ireland.
Yeah, exactly. I get it.
Born to Run comes up again by Chris McDougall from John Gleeson. Open by Andre Agassi, Abigail Colleran. Everybody loves Open.
Classic. An absolute classic.
Tiny Adams' book is mostly pictures. Tony Adams even says Gary Loughran. I did a thing recently, Ray Parlour, who said, remember the video that came out of him doing training at Granada? Tony Adams, and it was like
yeah.
It was actually an old George Graham thing, which was like when it's push and pull. So when a right back goes forward, somebody pulls into the space.
Okay.
When a central midfield, particularly in central midfield partnership or a centre back partnership, when one goes forward, one comes back. And it was like, so Ray Parlour looked at it and went, oh Jesus, he's doing it in public. That must be a secret thing for us. But he knew exactly what he meant. And it was like, based on sound coaching principles, it just looked ludicrous.
That was actually this year, wasn't it? That feels like many moons ago, that Ray Parlour or the Tony Adams dance. Like, oh my God.
Last year, was he?
So ridiculous.
Is that a 2017 thing?
It was, yeah. It was like,
right, Jesus.
It was this season. It was this footballing season he took over.
He was at Granada, was it?
Yeah.
Oh God, it feels like 2012. Rory Cassidy says, lads, it's like the lotto. What's the first thing you'd do? I'd give myself 2 months, a book every 3 days roughly, and have a good sports book binge. My brain would be exhausted from my efforts. Sounds like a good plan, right? Please give me some luck. That's not a bad entry for our competition so far. Like, what would you do? Where would you start?
Whichever ones you haven't read, I'd suppose. I'd probably Barry Ryan for me, because I haven't read it and it just looks class. And everybody who's read it says it's class. So, yeah, it's a pretty easy one for me. Like, obviously the ones that you've read, you wouldn't read again.
Fair enough.
Not yet.
Paul Griffin says, Back from the Brink by Paul McGrath. Boys of Summer by Roger Kahn, always one of my faves. That's Boys of Summer.
It's a cricket book, is it?
Is it?
Is it?
Is it Jazzy's favourite?
Or is it a rugby book?
Don't know, we can look that one up. Dark Trade by Donald McRae, says Colin Corcoran. Just finished Dub Sub Confidential, and I have to say it's one of the most fascinating sports books I've ever read. Yeah, that's a former Sports Book of the Year award winner, I think from 3 or 4 years ago at this point.
2 years ago.
3 years ago?
It was Donaghy last year. It would have been Dub Sub the year before, and then Jim McGuinness the year before.
Is it that's the order, yeah?
I think so, yeah.
GAA every year.
Yeah, but I could be getting my lines crossed with this award and then the general Irish Sportsbook Awards.
Which is a popularity.
Yeah.
Some of my favourites, I love Jerry Eisenberg's Once There Were Giants, which I got after listening to him in Off the Ball interview. I feel as though I deserve to win for not giving the generic Andre Agassi open response to this, says Billy Mulcahy, throwing shade at a bunch of people from a little bit earlier on as well. Brian Kelly says Dub Sub Confidential and Provided You Don't Kiss Me by the Brian Clough book. Is that Danny Taylor's Brian Clough book? No, somebody else's. Duncan Hamilton's. Yeah, sorry about that. So Duncan, fair play to you. The Descent, Thomas Decker. Says Dr. Sal Butamol, who was obviously renamed himself for Christmas.
I'd throw Tyler Hamilton's book right in there. Speaking of Hamilton's, it almost feels like a spy fiction novel. It just moves so fast.
I only flicked through it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth actually intently reading it from start to finish. It's very rare that you can read something based on fact, particularly about sport, and your heart is like, what's going to happen next? Even though you know exactly the end result of things, just the specific stories that occur.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the guy who actually wrote it, but he does it really, really well.
It's the guy who wrote The Talent Code, Daniel Coyle.
Daniel Coyle, that's it.
Crash and Burn, Tommy Burns, great interview with us last year, says Willie. Tommy says great interview with us last year. Willie says Crash and Burn. It's Tommy blowing our own trumpet on that one. So he was an absolutely amazing character. The documentary, if you could get a chance to see it, it might even be on YouTube at this point. But like, he has one of those lives where you start in a small Irish rural town and you end up, on like some Mexican drug dealer's land, having the crack and driving fast cars and living the life, and suddenly guns start going off and you go, yeah, maybe I'll just do something else in my life.
It's insane. It's an absolutely incredible story. That is one that might even top Barry Ryan on my list of books on my to-do list this Christmas.
So a sports book of the year for the William Hill Sports Book of the Year, is a cycling book. Tom Simpson, Bird on the Wire by Andy McGrath. It's the 4th cycling title to win the award. This book gives fresh insight into the life of trailblazer Tom Simpson, the first Briton to wear the Tour de France's yellow jersey 50 years after his tragic death. The blurb on the back of the book: this might not age very well. Sir Bradley Wiggins. As a British cyclist, your identity is massively informed by him, so it goes without saying that he was instrumental in my 2012 Tour de France victory. What a wanker. What a self-obsessed wanker.
But even if, like you say it doesn't age very well or won't age very well, that's already a pretty bad statement currently. Like, okay, it was a tragedy that Tom Simpson died, but at the same time, like, he was a doper. And Bradley Wiggins to say this doper was instrumental in my Tour de France win.
Yeah.
Is...
I mean, as our good friend Digger would say, like, was he one of the good dopers? Or was he one of the dopers who we actually are okay with? Because ultimately everybody was doing it. I don't know. This is a morass. The cycling dopers. I mean, maybe their generation are the ones who ruined it for everybody else. But like, you read back to the stories of them, like stopping off for booze.
That is Tom Simpson. Yeah, that was the last place he stopped before he died. He stopped at, I don't know, it probably wasn't even a pub at the bottom of Mont Ventoux, and I think it was like almost 10 shots of whiskey or whatever. It was some spirit. I think it was whiskey. And then with his amphetamines, just creates this cocktail, this toxic cocktail, and he keeps on going up to the top of Ventoux and dies on the way up. Incredible.
Yeah.
It is a tragedy, but at the same time, he is celebrated because he passed away so soon and was a legend of British cycling. But he, much like everybody else at the time, you'd suspect, was a cheater.
So just a quick recap of all the sports news of the day. It's going to be Bristol City versus Manchester City in the semi-finals of the Christian Carambou Cup. Chelsea are going to face Arsenal in the other semi-final. They're two-legged affairs, and away goals will count double in the period of extra time. Isn't that it?
Well, as long as Carabao haven't come in and changed the rules drastically.
Louis van Gaal is apparently favourite to be the new Swansea manager. Paul Clement sacked yesterday. Louis van Gaal is slowly toweling off and getting off his sun lounger wherever in the world he is, and deciding that he's ready to be back in English football in particular. Maybe Swansea City is the level that he's at the moment, and maybe he could have a revolutionary impact there with his football from the 1970s. Cian Healy is out for 3 weeks, banned for his no arms headbutt tackle projectile missile launch.
No, it was an arm. It was a forearm smash.
Forearm smash.
It's my favourite word. It's my favourite term, forearm smash.
Obviously, I'm confusing him with somebody else.
Suilagi.
I must have missed that bit. Yeah, Michael Meehan obviously announced that he is retiring from intercounty football late last night in a statement. That was a bit of a pity the way, because I was so delighted to see him back last year and so happy that his career had ended or wasn't ending enforced by injury, and then ultimately he ends up getting a twinge, and like just one more, see if he can come back for one more year. But it's
at least he goes away with a, I suppose, with some sort of grace, a little bit like beating Mayo is kind of what I'm referring to here. Has had a good enough.
Yeah, totally.
Like obviously he appears in the qualifier before the Kerry match, which was against Tip, wasn't it? In the round 4 qualifier, he comes on as a sub. The teams that they hammer, I'm trying to rack my brains. Already the summer's already a muddle in my brain. Donegal it was actually, wasn't it, when they hammered them. Yeah, he comes on as a sub in that, and it was like, it almost felt like a victory lap, because I think the way the draw was going to be fixed, it was always going to be Kerry they were going to play. And
well, should we know? You're basically saying Kerry were always going to beat Galway. I get the subject there.
There was a weird finality about it, that if it was going to be Mayo, Kerry or Dublin or even Tyrone, back in August we were thinking, oh, the big four, and nobody coming through the qualifiers stands a chance against them, although Mayo themselves came through the qualifiers. But
all right, that was good.
There we go. It's a very convoluted way of describing Michael Meehan.
Yeah, an amazing career by Michael Meehan. I hope he enjoys his retirement and hopefully gets to play a bit of club football as well. So we want to talk about the Eir Sports annual survey. This is their sports sponsorship survey, and so it's a lot of interesting stuff in it. Obviously, we'll focus, I guess, on two quick things here. Katie Taylor is the number one, streets ahead of everybody else. Conor McGregor is second. He's down from last year. Johnny Sexton is third. Joe Canning fourth. Aidan O'Brien level on 4th, and James McLean, despite the fact he was the Irish Sports Person of the Year, finishes in number 6. Now, the greatest sporting achievement was Katie Taylor winning the WBA Lightweight World Championship, and so, like, I don't know about surveys, I have to say. What event are you most looking forward to in 2018? The GAA Championship, the FIFA World Cup. Obviously, Ireland not there, massively impacting the 23% figure that they get. The Six Nations, 13%, and the European Rugby Champions Cup. So 20% looking forward to rugby, 7% looking forward to Cheltenham, 23% looking forward to the World Cup and the GAA Championships. I wonder if you split football and hurling, like, you know, the way hurling snobs hate football and football people hate hurling snobs.
Well, no, it's mostly one-way traffic there. Hurling people hate football. Football people generally like hurling.
And it turns out the thing that we thought was true is obviously true. Everybody who's watching sport is actually really bored by watching it and is spending most of their time on Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp and YouTube. Well,
Twitter is often complementary to the sport you're watching. You get good opinion, you get good stats. You can offer your own opinion on Twitter. So I think it's complementary. But
Ireland's favourite sport is still football.
Yeah, that's
the gap is closing.
Yeah, it's unsurprising though, really. But also,
like, Katie Taylor, our most admired sports person.
You can see why she is the most admired sports person in the country, for sure. Because I think this whole doing things on an international level counts for a hell of a lot when it comes to admiration. And also, I'm not referring to any specific other person who may have made waves in different other countries, but certainly Katie Taylor carries herself with a lot of respect, and she is widely respected by everybody.
You mean Conor McGregor?
Yeah, well, I was being sarcastic, obviously. And thanks for pointing out the very obvious there, Ger.
You know, I've never seen a joke I didn't want to ruin.
There is, like, the one thing I think from that, you mentioned it there, the popularity of GAA and the closing gap between football and Gaelic
Why
games.
does Ryan Burnett not make the list if Katie Taylor's making the list? Because, like, it's a far more, you know.
He's not an Olympic gold medalist. He's a
Nordy as well. People don't like Nordies here, it turns out.
Well, yeah, we don't know where the survey was carried out. Potentially it was all carried out in...
it's a Republic of Ireland survey.
Okay, well, there you go. Like, I mean... that is definitely a factor in it. There's no question about it. But, like, I know we always use it as a sarcastic thing, and it was mentioned earlier on today, but the whole, the Dubs would be good for hurling if they start being successful, or the Dubs are good for Gaelic football. I think Gaelic football's popularity has actually increased a little bit over the past couple of years when you have this great team, especially when that great team is located in the capital. Like, I think as a neutral, people kind of like watching this Dublin team.
Yeah.
Kind of like Gaelic football as a result.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
I don't know.
I don't know. I think that you mentioned that there's a closing gap between football and Gaelic games. I think a successful Dublin team is a factor in that.
To make it more popular for everybody.
I think so. Like, I want to see them lose so badly.
You know, yeah.
So I'm going to watch Gaelic football.
It's because you're from Kerry.
But everybody wants Dublin to lose outside of Dublin.
I don't. Well, I don't mind I wouldn't mind them winning 5 in a row. So it's actually the greatest team of all time. And
you were shouting for Dublin against Mayo this year in the All-Ireland final.
I wouldn't say I was shouting for them. I'm not.
You were leaning more towards them.
I mean, I just wanted James McCarthy to win Footballer of the Year.
Because you had loads of money put on that.
Yeah. All right. Very quickly, some Stephen Rochford for you. He was on the show last night with Joe and Kev. Here he is on the standoff about the plan to leave April open for the club players. Now, his team are out on May the 16th, I think, or certainly early on in May, and he's 13th, and he's particularly worried about the impact that a ban on training for inter-county players 2 weeks before his first game in the championship might have on his team. Have a listen.
The April training situation, I understand you've shelved that now, the warm weather training camp in April, is that right?
Well, I suppose there's a few points on that, Joe. One is that it was never suggested that we were going on a warm weather camp. I don't know where that actually came from. We haven't been on a warm weather camp under any of my 2 previous years. And I think, the whole April thing is just sort of, I suppose, has brought now the whole fixture schedule. It's quite complex and it's not consistent. And what I mean by that is that, like, different counties apply different rules and agreements to how they play, and that's absolutely fine. And I don't envy, Pádraig Duffy's, Croke Park, or even county board administrators trying to sort of, cushion in club fixtures. And that, like, our track record this year is that, like, in the 5 weeks, I think, after the National League this year, our club players played in four weekends out of them 5. So sort of the suggestion that we were looking to take on Croke Park, or that we were given, we were going to be some ways rebellious, is it's a little bit of a hysteria around what were our preparations, or what we were planning was our preparations, and I suppose it's taken now a bit of a national stage, which is not something that we wanted it to be.
Get more of that Rush for Goodness on podcast as well, of course, on offtheball.com. Loads of stuff that he talked about, including the Lions led by Donkeys headline in the in the Sunday Independent. As ever, if you want to get in touch with us, you can tweet us here at Off the Ball, or you can get us on facebook.com/Off the Ball, and you can leave comments wherever you're getting this live stream as well. Now, Robbie Dunne is on the line to talk to us ahead of the Clasico this weekend. Robbie, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing, lads?
Congratulations, your book has made the shortlist for the Guardian Sports Books of the Year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was delighted with that. Didn't really expect it, and didn't really know what to expect, to be honest with you. My first book and my first effort. So yeah, I was absolutely delighted. Actually, I've got a couple. Oh yeah, I've got a couple here. I was going to say you could give those away, so make it 23 books.
Well, we'll do that. We'll add this. There you go. That's what it is. Working class heroes. As a matter of interest, why did you pick the story of Rayo Vallecano?
To be honest with you, I think it was just a story crying out to be told. I was moving to Madrid, and I figured I wanted to write a book at some stage. So I was going to teach English and just get working in sports journalism when I arrived here, and wanted to have something to do in order to kind of keep me busy, keep me involved, get me up to speed with journalists, players, the landscape of Spanish football, and figured I'd write a book. And I think Rayo was screaming out the story was screaming out to be told.
Why was the story screaming out to be told?
Well, just the fact that they're so politically involved. Like the fans are, the Bucaneros, the ultra group, are so heavily involved in the club. They were just capable of making international news so often. Like with the story with Carmen Ayuso, like the club got together and collected money so that she wouldn't be evicted from her house, and the protests, and the manager Paco Gémez is really attacking, really charismatic, really interesting. I just said, like, there's loads of content there for a book, and I said, and they're also in that intersection between both accessible, as in I could get interviews, but also really interesting. So I just figured I'd go for it, and it's worked out okay. Yeah, well, listen, congratulations. We wanted to talk to you about the Clasico this weekend. One of the questions that came up a little bit earlier on was, why the hell is the game kicking off at 12 o'clock this weekend? Yeah, I think it's an effort by Javier Tebas, the president of La Liga, to kind of appeal to he's been really trying to push La Liga in foreign markets, and the Asian, it's a perfect time to sell it in Asia. So it's kicking off the afternoon game, and they've also got the Valencia derby after, and the Galician derby just after that. So it's kind of a day of derbies, I suppose, kicking off with the biggest of all, and it's a perfect time for the Asian market. So tell us a little bit about what you actually expect to happen in the Clasico this weekend then. Yeah, to be honest, it's kind of a strange one, because Real Madrid obviously were away at the Club World Cup, so it's kind of building now to a nice crescendo for Saturday. But prior to that, there wasn't as much build-up, because nobody really knows what to expect in terms of what, like, Real Madrid have been kind of flattering to deceive a little bit this year, and as have Barcelona. Under their new manager, Ernesto Valverde, there have been injuries. The BBC haven't been playing. Benzema's been off. Ronaldo hasn't been scoring. I would say, and also the point difference at the moment is 11, with Real Madrid have a game in hand, but that can go to 14 if Barcelona wins. So at the moment, La Liga isn't really exciting as much as it probably used to, or if the point differential wasn't as large, you know.
What's the story with Gareth Bale, Robbie? He's set to make his first start in any game, I think, since September, if he's good to go this weekend. Do you feel that everything's okay there with Gareth Bale? You mentioned the BBC there, and if he gets back into form, it seems like this thing could well be on if Real Madrid win at the weekend and they win that game in hand, because we know how powerful that three-pronged strike force can be. And I know he scored more goals than Cristiano Ronaldo in the league this season, but you still look at the likes of Paulinho and that Barcelona team and you think, well, maybe things could get a little bit railroaded if they lose at the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think the people have been kind of waiting for Barcelona to railroad, as you say. But I think with Bale, there was even questions that it was a psychological issue, and Zinedine Zidane was asked if they've sent him to a psychologist to get it sorted out, and he said, and then Bale came back and said, it's not in my head. I'm telling you, I'm injured. Like it was his soleus muscle, which is a really notoriously difficult muscle to heal. It's underneath the calf, and then there was the soleus, and then he had a hamstring, and then he broke down again, and just having a nightmare with injuries. But it was also a case that Real Madrid weren't going well when he was absent, so they were kind of rushing him back. And he tended to do well when he came back against Fuenlabrada in the Copa. He came on, he was excellent, changed the whole game. And like we saw in the semi-final of the Club World Cup, Al Jazeera, he came on and scored with his first touch. And so Real Madrid are like, okay, we need this guy now. And also the fact that Benzema hasn't really been firing on any cylinders really, and when it's kind of like Zinedine Zidane has sworn that he'll stick with Benzema to the death, but when Benzema isn't functioning as he should be, the whole system around him breaks down. So Isco isn't as efficient or effective. Ronaldo is vying for the same spaces in the box as Benzema, and they just have no width. Everything kind of seems to collapse in on itself in the box. But in terms of Paulinho's been absolutely excellent for Barcelona, and he's absolutely just what the doctor ordered, because he kind of gives that little bit of extra muscle to loosen up defenses for Messi, and Messi has benefited massively from that. And the other thing is that Neymar was like this, like he was crying out for more of the spotlight, I suppose, and Paulinho is absolutely content living in the shadow of Messi and working for him, and every chance he gets, he says, I'll run for Messi, let me do the running, I'll do the running, and let him be decisive later. And that's what he does. He's just box to box, throwing himself into tackles, getting on the end of crosses, and he's been brilliant.
Yeah, it's interesting because in a weird way he kind of represents the Valverde movement at Barcelona, because it seems to me from watching the season anyway that Valverde has placed more of an importance on the defence, and what I mean by that is that he's started from the back and working forward, whereas previous Barcelona managers are like, it's grand, as long as we have our attacking movement, all good, as long as Messi's in form, we're going to outscore teams, and that's that. Whereas now, for the first time in about a decade, we're seeing Barcelona starting at the back and working forward, thinking about the muscle, thinking about keeping clean sheets. They've only conceded 7 goals this season, and it seems to be kind of a shift in thinking from Barcelona for the first time, as I say, in around 10 years. Is that fair to say, Robbie?
Yeah, I'd agree with that to an extent. I think Luis Enrique was criticised for going away from the Barcelona philosophy and style, and Xavi Hernandez was just speaking yesterday actually to Catalunya radio, and he was saying that finally Valverde is back on the ball with the Barca DNA, getting that movement, the Barcelona philosophy back into play. And I also think that Valverde, he was thrown straight into the fire in terms of losing Neymar. And then I was just joking the other day, my friend saying that the money that PSG paid for Neymar is cursed or something, because every player that they chased to replace Neymar or with that money has just gone arseways, I suppose. And so they replaced him with Dembele, bought him, he got injured, he's been out now for 3 or 4 months with a particularly nasty kind of tendon injury. And which is the longer scale of an injury, unless you start talking about structural knee damage and stuff. So that's the particularly nasty one. Then they were chasing Coutinho, and that was a farce almost, you could say, in terms of they were going to get him, and then they were chasing him, and it was too much, and then they were saying that they definitely had him. And now with Griezmann, they've highlighted him as a player who they want to come in, and now they're after making a mess of that. And I think Valverde he brought in Paulinho, and now he's just working on that balance, because he has to. Because when you've Neymar, Messi and Suarez, I mean, nothing else really matters. And I suppose even if it's not the case, they take the headlines, and it seems like that's where the attack starts, and that's where everything starts and ends for Barcelona. But with under Valverde and with this current crop of players, it kind of is the case that he has to be more balanced based on just the personnel.
Yeah, so it looks like they're going to win the league this year. How realistic is a Champions League success for them this season? Is this team ready to be able to compete in the latter stages in a meaningful way?
Yeah, I'm not I mean, that's a difficult question to answer because they really haven't been great this year. They've won 13, drew 3, which is the upper end of what you can expect. So the only way, and I don't mean this to sound disrespectful, but the only way at the moment for Barcelona and Valverde is down. And I mean, they haven't looked as good. They looked very good against Depor, but against them in more recent weeks against Villarreal, they were really slow and kind of stagnant. Suarez hasn't been great. So to suggest that they're going to win the league, I think, is a little bit too soon because Real Madrid, and I was just writing about this the other day, that Zidane has figured out his style with Real Madrid almost mirrors the way Ronaldo looks at individual awards. He doesn't score the most goals anymore. He still scores a lot, but it's not about scoring the most goals. It's about scoring the most important ones. And I think Zidane has this Real Madrid side. He had his eye on the Club World Cup, and he figured Barcelona weren't going to start well under Valverde and losing Neymar. And he's going to have them peaking for the second half of the season, which they look like they're coming into a little bit of form coming into El Clasico. But in terms of the Champions League, yeah, I mean, Messi is the key, isn't he? He's the difference maker. Xavi Hernandez, again, in that interview last night, he was saying about Ronaldo saying he was the best, but he goes, listen, there is no comparison. There is no doubt. It is quite obvious. It's very clear. Messi is the difference maker. And when you talk about Champions League latter stages, Man City obviously are looking really excellent. Real Madrid will be coming good, but with Messi and with Suarez looking a little bit better than he had in previous weeks, last week against Depor he looked good. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'd never rule Barcelona out with those guys in their team for a late run in the Champions League.
Give us a prediction for Saturday at high noon.
A prediction, I would say, the fact that there's a little bit of kind of I was just thinking about the Iniesta was saying when it comes to El Clasico, you don't look about the standings in the league and things like that. And there's a little bit of bad blood now because the Club World Cup, the winners usually get a guard of honour, and Barcelona have said they're not going to do it, which is a little bit of a kind of a needle. Like they were saying, listen, if we're in the tournament and you beat us, we'll do a guard of honour, but you didn't beat us. It's kind of not a big deal, so we're not going to do the guard of honour. And I think that's going to lead to a very kind of a lot of kind of bad blood. Not that the El Clasico needs that extra kind of motivation, but I would say you're looking probably at a draw. But if I don't like sitting on the fence, so I'd say Barcelona to be perfectly honest with you.
Robbie, great stuff. Thanks very much, and congratulations again on the book.
Absolutely, lads. Thanks a million.
All right, so we now have 23 books to give away. Working Class Heroes by Robbie Dunne, the Rayo Vallecano story.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this will be the first time in the history that I can remember of El Clasico that everybody's going to be cheering for Real Madrid. So they're so easy to hate. But everybody this time...
I don't know if I'm going to be cheering for Real Madrid.
Why not?
So the league's over, who cares?
We all care. What do you mean, who cares? It's a great division once there's an actual title race.
Yeah, but
and think about how good the next El Clasico will be.
No, we need Valencia and Atletico to be good, so it's a 14 thing next year. Like this.
Let them worry about themselves. There's nothing like a Barca Real Madrid title race.
Yeah, but let's have Barcelona back being meaningful competitors in the Champions League. That's what I think is important. Because I don't think they have been, for all the stuff about you've got Messi. It's still the same team who has been annihilated on several occasions in the Champions League over the last couple of years.
Yeah, maybe. I would say they are realistic competitors. I think we're very, very quick to judge them, especially this season.
All right, let's move on. We'll come back to that again. Kilban completely overlooked Eden Hazard in the Player of the Year debate. Chelsea's best player last year as they won the league. Belgium topped their World Cup group with him as talisman. And now almost single-handedly carrying Chelsea to third in the league. Wow, third in the league. Disgruntled Chelsea fan. Love the show though, says Cormac Hare on Football Book. Last night Kevin Kilban pissed everybody off by giving us his top 5 footballers of 2017.
Messi comes in at number 2.
But I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Ronaldo is at a patchy second half.
I think you said to me, put your medals on the table, Joe, of which I've none. So I can't say it. But that's what Cristiano Ronaldo was saying to Lionel Messi.
This is what you get for having a conversation with a rugby man.
Yeah.
So you're going with the medals for Ronaldo?
Well, the big games that he scored in towards the back end of the season last year. Yeah. That semi-final, Atletico as well. The goals he scored in that, and yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ronaldo 1, Messi 2.
Yeah. Harry Kane 3.
Right.
Hello.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who? Okay, go on. Give us 4.
Kevin De Bruyne and Robert Lewandowski.
I thought you'd have Mbappe in there.
No. Mbappe had a good second half of the season, but again, if I'm judging yours, what you're saying, he's had a poor goal scoring return this year, Joe.
No, it's just because you love Mbappe.
I do love Mbappe. I was thinking of putting Benjamin Mendy in there because I love him even more, but he's injured now, so I couldn't.
Who was unlucky to miss out?
Oh, I've got a few there. Dybala, Higuain, Sadio Mane, Mo Salah, Pogba. I've got named a few Premier League lads.
Pogba's no good, Kev. We've been through that.
We've had this conversation. Yeah, he's unbeaten in about 12 months or 13 months, Paul Pogba.
No, that's stats, Kev. Football men.
Right.
Football men, no. So you've Harry Kane 3. Wow.
Yeah, his goals is unbelievable. He scored over 50 goals.
I know.
Yeah.
Who was 4 again?
De Bruyne. De Bruyne's had a really good end to the season, and this season he's just been the best player, so I had to put Kevin De Bruyne in.
And who was 5 again?
Robert Lewandowski.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen much of Lewandowski.
Yeah.
Do you watch the Bundesliga much?
Football man, Joe.
Yeah, Paul Pogba obviously was beaten last night, so that's the difficulty of doing a list when Bristol City are rolling into Manchester United's.
And they're stalking you, trying to end your unbeaten run. I thought including Robert Lewandowski there was a little bit ridiculous.
Hipsterish.
Ridiculous.
Hipsterish.
Oh, hipsterish as well.
Yeah.
Excluding Kylian Mbappe was one of the worst footballing decisions I've ever seen. That's just shocking that he's not in your top 5 footballers of 2017.
You're obsessed with fantasy, so you probably have fantasy football. Your top 5, does it automatically come down to stats and stuff like that? Or you're like, ooh, that guy, he's an amazing free-scoring left back that might win me my league.
No, but just no. Obviously, your number 1 or 2 is going to be Ronaldo or Messi.
Well, let's take Ronaldo or Messi out of the list, and then come up with the top 5.
Oh, is that the well? Neymar is probably the best footballer in the world, then, isn't he?
Okay, all right.
I would say Mbappe is top 3 if you take Ronaldo and Messi out. I think he's just absolutely wonderful, and especially if you look at 2017 terms, it seems that Kev is kind of excluding any Ligue 1 performances, which I guess is fair enough. Unless you're absolutely sublime in Ligue 1.
Amazing Champions League last.
He was, yeah, but I think that's what he was saying. He was great in the second half of last season, but he seems to be excluding everything that's happened this season. When he's actually been really good in the Champions League, really good in Ligue 1. Okay, it's not as important as, say, Kevin De Bruyne's performances in the Premier League. But I would have put Mbappe ahead of Kevin De Bruyne on a 2017 basis because of how anonymous De Bruyne was in the whole landscape of football discourse in the first half of this calendar year. But then you think calendar years are complete bullshit. So
absolutely, when it comes to football, you don't get a special prize. Leeds were once the top team in English football in a calendar year. David O'Leary was the manager who won more points than anybody else in a single calendar year. And David O'Leary is an amazing manager, absolutely. Very employable now.
So would you not have Harry Kane in your top 5 footballers of 2017?
Well, I wouldn't have a list of top 5 footballers of 2017.
Well, I would, and Harry Kane would be in there.
There you go. Right, so this morning we had an amazing prize to give away, courtesy of Eir Sport. We had the 21 shortlisted sports books, or was it 22 and one more? So it's the best sports books of the year, and then also Working Class Heroes, which, I don't know, somehow the Grand Poobah at Eir Sports, who decides which books make it and which books don't, manage to miss Working Class Heroes, which has made the Guardian's shortlist.
Yeah, I know, it's weird how these things work.
Yeah, but anyway, Adrian Barry will answer your queries about that a little bit later on. So this is the entire long list of the Eir Sport books, and we're giving it away to one winner whose Christmas has just been made, and that winner is it's Leo Colgan on Facebook, or Football Book as it has now been renamed around here. He commented, "The Secret Race" and "The Club" as 2 great reads that spring to mind in his comment. There are loads of great book suggestions in the comment section on our Facebook stream this morning. So if you're looking for some guidance, some advice, some help with Christmas presents, then check that out there. On the radio show tonight on Off the Ball, John Giles and Graham Hunter. And then tomorrow we have a special end of the year quiz with the whole Off the Ball team. And we also have Brian O'Driscoll on tomorrow night's show. Oh no, maybe it's tonight. The quiz is tonight because we've got live football on tomorrow night. Because tomorrow night Liverpool and Arsenal are going at it. So it's Brian O'Driscoll and the quiz. So the quiz is tonight.
As long as I can go and just get it written straight away, because it's a bumper quiz jar with 8 rounds. That's right, 8 rounds in the big fat crappy quiz of the year, which I'm sure I can just see the people at home right now so excited.
Oh my God,
with this.
8 rounds.
8 rounds.
And so
there's going to be a dramatic turn in the rapid fire round. a very dramatic, a sinister turn.
Do I need to know anything about this before I read it for the first time, or should I read it?
Well, no, as I say, I need to go and write it.
Okay,
so once I got it written,
right, okay. All right, so we're going to leave you now with another clip of Mario Rosenstock, who has been thrilling people. You can get the full podcast of this available wherever you get podcasts, and also on the offtheball.com site, and just click on the podcast link there. This is from Tuesday's show. Adrian and Owen are going to be back tomorrow morning from 7:45. Until then, what's the Colin Kaepernick celebration? Something like that. Take it away, Mario.
I remember, one of my earliest impressions would have been people like all the sports guys. So, David Coleman, who was one of the first characters I did on Gift Grub, actually. Right. We used to do him every Monday, and it was just like, I used to just copy Spitting Image, and I go, Alberto Walter-Reina opens his legs and shows his class. And of course, there was Coleman's obsession with the Kenyans, right? So it's like, here's the Briton in front. The Briton is like, oh, but here come the Kenyans. 1 Kenyan, 2 Kenyans, 3 Kenyans. There's a swarm of Kenyans coming over the hill. Here come the Kenyans. And it was all vaguely racist, the whole thing, because he wouldn't go, Kip Tanui, Walk Tanui, Pip Tanui, and more Kenyans. Here they come. And then so this was David Coleman.